I'm Larry Ray, President and CEO of American Manganese, Inc., listed on the TSX Venture, ticker symbol AMY, A-M-Y, with proprietary patents in the U.S., China, and South Africa. Our focus is on recycling lithium-ion batteries for electric vehicles. China recently legislated the responsibility for recycling onto their electric vehicle manufacturers and importers. For more information, please visit AmericanManganeseInc.com or phone me, Larry Ray, at 778-574-4444.
You're listening to HowStreet.com radio, available online at TalkDigitalNetwork.com. Welcome to HowStreet.com radio, the online source for market opinions. Here is Jim Goddard.
We're chatting with Martyn Element. Martyn is a Vancouver marketing and corporate consultant who focuses on sourcing and pursuing new business ventures. Welcome back to the show, Martyn.
Welcome to you and welcome to all the listeners all over the world.
Martyn, Brexit, of course, something near and dear to your heart, whether Britain should stay or go from the European Union. The vote's coming up on Thursday. Your thoughts?
My thoughts are one of great sadness, and that, the world does seem to be, I would think on a percentage basis, we seem to be living terrible terror at the moment for one reason and another. And I was just hearing yesterday that there was a huge rounding up of people in Belgium that were planning on doing a big explosion at a big game just yesterday. And as you probably know, the Jo, as she's known, the Labour MP that was pro-staying, was killed by what is thought to be a high right group that wanted to exit. So they've stopped all canvassing. I've even heard a couple of rumors they could stop the vote, although I haven't heard any more on that since I first heard it a couple of days ago. But just sadness is my overwrought feeling, but the reality is that there's still the emotions that are running so high on this subject. And, a lot of it is financial by some of the biggest businessmen in the business, like Dyson, the famous man that has revolutionized the vacuum cleaner as we know it, with those wonderful vacuum cleaners of him. He's put an awful lot of money for leaving. And, many, many, many high-profile businessmen have put lots of money up because they just don't want to be part of the EU with all its regulations and becoming, and now, and all the different reasons. So, and I also think that at the moment the polls are very much for the exiting, but, we were just talking off air that these polling companies are getting it wrong more often than they're getting it right. And I don't know what method they're using, but it seems that at the moment they seem to be so wrong. I mean, and Cameron himself was rumored to be losing his government of the day in the last election, and of course he was a resounding victory. So, polling says they're leaving, and in reality when they get inside the booth, a lot of people are thinking, for safety, they might say, what, I think we should be leaving because of, being an individual and having our own way and not being told what to do by a bunch of people out of Brussels. But you know what? I'm a safety worrywart and I'm going to vote to stay in. So I think that's wide open which way it's going to go. But it'll be very interesting. And who's it be to me to comment either way? But my overwrought feeling is one of great sadness. I think that that we're living in such a violent world, and I must admit I did not ever in a million years see that coming. If it was a similar sort of scenario going on in America, it wouldn't surprise me so much with it being so toxic right now and so violent, but I just didn't see that happening in Great Britain. But there you are. It's a violent world that we live in. And we all need to remember what's important in life and try and keep to our own and things that we have no control over. And it's difficult. But no, my Britex comments are what they are. I think there's this true huge benefits. And one thing that has been getting a lot of press this last week is the one particularly out of Liverpool, which is Liverpool is a very, very, very to the left part of the world and has been for forever, I think, and a day. But they are singing the virtues, as I was last couple of weeks ago, that Liverpool would not be the Liverpool it is today if it wasn't for the EU and the billions of pounds that have been spent cleaning that town up and doing things that there wasn't the money around for the people of, or that part of the world, or the government in power in London to do itself. So, bricks and bouquets and roundabouts and slides and roundabouts, and who knows what's going to happen there. So there you are. I don't want to dwell any more on that subject, other than, of course, it's causing the price of gold to react, I think, violently is the word, violently, at the moment. So that's another story right there, Jim.
Well, you said, too, gold and lithium may be the new gold rush, quote unquote, kind of things that we're going to see over the summer.
Well, we were talking again, because before we come on, we talk a little bit, Jim and I, of course, and to set what we're going to be talking about. And I've said that I've been in the business as a broker since the early 80s, and I went to my own in the late 80s, my last job being Director of Corporate Finance over at Pacific International, which was a lovely associationship with John Eman and Max Meyer, and I really loved it, and I was in the thick of Clearly Canadian at that time, which went on to be a huge success. But, I've only really, I think, knowingly experienced one gold market during the summer. And as I was remarking, gold is gold. It's not a business. It's a living, almost breathing investment vehicle, and it doesn't know that it's July and August. And, by the way, listeners, July and August are two of the most productive months in Australia, because, of course, it's the middle of the winter. And, they get a lot of business done in July. And one of the biggest show of its kind in Australia is in Kalgoorlie, which is a very big gold area on the west coast of Australia, and it's right in the middle of July. So, it depends, but getting back to the point is that when that gold market was running in the summer, yes, it was the summer, and yes, George was away, or Susan was away, and you were trying to get a hold of them because, the deal's gone from 20 cents to $1.50, and they're looking to do a financing, and you have to phone people on the beach, and they're there with the holidays, and you can hear the kids squealing in the background, but things went right through July and August, and because it had to, because business was still going on, even though so many people are away on holiday in the Western world, in the UK and Europe particularly, and over here, of course, in America. So it'll be interesting because, gold is still is running very much so, breaking the 1,300 and back off, and then I think it tested 1315, and with a lot of the worries around the world and the zero interest rates being talked about again, and the Americans deciding they're not going to put the interest rates, although they keep rattling that saber as they want to raise those interest rates, of course. But, so if we have a gold market in the summer and August months, it's going to be interesting. I am looking at possibly taking some space again down in the city, and sort of some of my more cautious friends are saying, wait till September. Well, you don't know. I mean, July and August look like they're going to be very, very, very busy. And lithium, yes, there was a big lithium deal announced on Friday. One of the biggest lithium deposits in the world is in Quebec. They mismanaged it terribly over the years, trying to build a big processing plant. Hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars were spent at the Canadian lithium. It has different names. R&P, I think, is another name it has, but lithium, Canadian lithium. And they messed up on the building of the processing. Things like they didn't put enough installation, and people said that they didn't spend enough money making sure that the processing plant was weatherproof. And when you get 30 and 40 below, which is what you get in the winter in that part of Quebec, it didn't work. And the whole thing went bankrupt badly, and it's been in bankruptcy for quite a while. And lots of people in the industry were saying to me they thought it would be bought out of bankruptcy in that $100 million sort of price range. Well, I haven't seen it written down yet. I haven't physically seen it reported, listeners, but I'm told from some very good sources and people that do know that space a lot better than me that it changed hands and it was announced at $340 million by a Chinese group. Now, bearing in mind, I don't know what the conditions were on the 340, but I do know that there's going to have to be, I don't know if it's part of that money, that dollar figure, but to get that whole situation going is going to cost hundreds of millions of dollars to straighten everything out. So that is very big news. And I think the lithium space, much like the marijuana space, everybody went stampeding in. But remember, with the marijuana, you've got laws and you've got governments involved, and you've got a timing issue. And anytime you've got those two animals involved, you have hiccups and timing isn't going as they thought. And a lot of the marijuana was buyer beware, because you had everybody, Tom, Dick, and Harry, getting in that space because it was an easy target and somewhere you wanted to be. And the reality, there's only like a handful of companies that have done really, really well. Tweed being one of them, I think is the name of a big one in back east. And, you know, and they're suffering right now. A lot of people wouldn't touch marijuana. You wouldn't get financing for a marijuana deal if you could be trying one of the best salesmen or the best management group. So marijuana has come off the boil, but that's not to say it's not going to come right back on the boil. But with lithium, you've got so many people in there with no expertise, no management. They've staked the property, they've got a good area, or they've got a small resource that they're hoping to expand upon. But there's no real. It's just trying to catch the. So you've got all kinds of deals that have been done, with 3 or 4 that really have something, and then there's another 44 that are just, you know, chasing the dragon there, and not really having something other than a promotional package. So buyer beware again, listeners. But I think, you know, as long as you've got those sorts of numbers flying around, and as long as you've got a complete change of mentality, you know, we're watching oil being transposed by lithium, and then you've got the naysayers. Oh, well, I think lithium's overdone, and there's going to be other things other than lithium, and there's going to be other metals. Well, of course there is. I mean, and graphite is another one that is getting a lot of play, and so is cobalt getting play, and so are these other metals. So anyway, yes, you could have a lithium gold play here going on right through the summer, and right, you know, and then hitting September at full stride and rocking and rolling, you know.
We'll have more with Martyn Element right after the break.
I'm Larry Ray, President and CEO of American Manganese Inc., listed on the TSX Venture, ticker symbol AMY, A-M-Y, with proprietary patents in the U.S., China, and South Africa. Our focus is on recycling lithium-ion batteries for electric vehicles. China recently legislated the responsibility for recycling onto their electric vehicle manufacturers and importers. For more information, please visit AmericanManganeseInc.com or phone me, Larry Ray, at 778-574-4444.
Welcome back. We're chatting with Martyn Element. Martyn, Brazil was part of what they called BRIC, Brazil, Russia, India, China. India and China still okay. Russia, who knows, because they're back behind a semi-iron curtain. And Brazil, a horrible mess. Apparently they don't have the money to run the security for the games. Games might even be called off.
I heard that just yesterday. Well, of course, and then Russia enters its ugly head because of the field and track being banned from the competition altogether, although they have left a small door open that Russian athletes that are registered or working outside of the country and possibly can prove that they're not tainted and can have all kinds of tests before they compete. They're allowed to compete and possibly could be independently awarded a medal. But what an absolute mess. And you've got Brazil now saying they don't have the money for the security for these athletes. And, you know, you've got that other awful, I always forget the name of it, Jim.
Zika.
With the mosquito.
The Zika virus.
The Zika virus, which is playing havoc. Yeah, I think there could be a last-minute surprise here. I mean, you know, it's that kind of a world at the moment. Everything is so on edge, and everything is like swings and tremendous volatility. I spent last night having dinner with a young couple out of Aracaju in the northeast of Brazil, which is my wife's part of Brazil she comes from. It's considered to be one of the safer parts of Brazil. They many years ago knocked down the favelas, and they don't. No one is one of its things. It has a reputation for not having favelas, and Aracaju by name, and the cashew nut. There's not many things in Aracaju that they're not doing with the cashew nut. We've talked about that before, and from ice cream to oil to drinks to liquor to cattle food and on and on and on and on. But it's deteriorating. The way of life is deteriorating in that town, and there's a husband and wife. They're in their early 30s. They've got 2 children, and you know he owns car dealerships. He has buildings that he has. He does a lot of work with the government for housing, subsidized housing, and a very, very astute, outgoing young gentleman in his early 30s. He's learning English as fast as he can. And this is his foray into Vancouver. He's heard so many good things about our beautiful city that we live in here. I know I'm broadcasting all over the world. And he wants out. He wants out. He wants to take his money and whatever he can do, and he wants to get in here. And there's still a gateway here, of course, if you put enough money in and you employ enough people and one thing and another into Vancouver. So, you know, the average person in Brazil is hurting terribly. And now they've got this, what's the word for it, Jim? Fiasco about to happen. But, you know, they are renowned for pulling things out at the end and leaving buildings to the last second and somehow or other getting it all together like they did with the soccer. And, you know, they're hoping to pull another proverbial rabbit out of the hat here as a nation. But how very sad. And Martyn Element privately looked at doing a deal 3-4 years ago. I spent a lot of money. And it was a fantastic idea that I was working on a winery in the south of Brazil, and I got really close to doing the deal with people that were enthused at what I was doing, and it was going to be a very fun project to be involved with. And I don't know, something happened, and I just felt a uneasiness, and I didn't pursue, and oh my, I'm so grateful that I didn't, because now I think it might have been a success in one thing and another in one way, but the whole thing would have just been, right now I'd be hurting terribly along with potentially a lot of people that were working with me on that. So some things just aren't meant to be, I don't think, Jim.
It's not a very peaceful world, as we're finding out the hard way, but yet people who take advantage of that and are in business in the arms industry seem to be doing okay, especially this Italian company.
Well, just finishing off on that, listeners, before I came on, I thought I'd put my famous Financial Times in this particular article. I put it somewhere safe, and I looked for it high and low here, and it was from a couple of weeks ago, and it was the Ballarat Gun Company, which is a very, very old Italian established gun company. And it was a very suave-looking guy, and the current family member that runs the business, and with his family, and you know, it was doing very well. But about 2 years ago, it became the issue gun for the Americans, which is amazing. You can imagine pulling that one off. You know, being America, you know, using probably one of the most armed countries in the world per capita, and making guns, and all the different companies that we know so well, using an Italian gun. And it was the number that got my attention. It boggled my mind. I went back and read the article the other day again. It was $623 million pounds a year. And I thought, almost $1 billion a year in selling a gun, a handgun. A handgun is what we're talking about mainly here. And I guess it was the number that staggered me. And I just read another number a few minutes ago before coming on, not a big fan of it myself, but the Lindekin, the business, you know, communication company, that's just been bought by Microsoft for $26 billion. Now, just hang on a second. That's $26 billion. I mean, it's kind of like, it's one a friend of mine said about the lithium, just to finish up here on the show, because I don't want it to run too long. I'm trying to aim for the TED 18 to 19 minutes, listeners, but just to think about lithium. Oh, it's done. There's too many companies in there, and there's lithium all over the place, and all this kind of stuff. Well, hang on a minute. You know, if you believe that lithium is here to stay for a while until they come up with some miracle other battery situation, which they don't have right now, although they're working on quite a few different things. You know, so there was a lithium company the week before that did a $50 million financing. And a friend of mine who's been around a long time, I think it was Shane Nyquist, said, you know, he's been a financier and he's financed almost as many deals as I has as a broker. He's in the brokerage community there with Mackie. He says, but Martyn, you know, think about it, Martyn. Namaska is capped at, today, I don't know, what is it capped at? 350 million Canadian, somewhere in that figure. And they just did a $50 million financing. Well, that's considered to be one of the biggest producing, or will be one of the biggest producers in the world. And as he said to me, you know, Martyn, not trying to belittle 350 million or a $50 million financing. Think about it. He said, you know, if, and we do believe that lithium is going to be the way of the future, and not just for cars, but for storing electricity for every power thing you can think of, whether it's wave power, solar power, wind power, you need batteries to store this stuff. What is 350 million? It's a drop in the bucket. when you think of the money that's swirling around, New York and around the world. And, there's a communications deal. I know it's apples and oranges, listeners, but I'm making the point of saying that 350 million is nothing if this space is where we think it's going. If it was 3.5 billion, you say, well, there you are. I think it's getting a little ahead of itself. And people will say to you they think Namask is getting ahead of itself right now. But, is it? It's the, buyer beware, listeners. And I'm just talking and I'm making comments here. I'm not saying that Namask is a buy. I'm absolutely not saying that. But I'm making the point of saying that the numbers aren't that big when you factor in the billions and trillions of dollars that are sitting out there. And if it does happen, and lithium is the oil of the future for powering, a big percentage of all these vehicles and one thing and another coming online, then, 350 is not a big number in the world of finance. That's all I'm saying, listeners. And, the usual disclosures that we give about, you're thinking about any of these things, you need someone that has spent the time or someone that really knows this space and really knows and you feel very comfortable with and is coming from a credible source. So please don't take all those comments. But I'm just making the point of saying the space is still, compared to other industries and things in the world out there, potentially in the mind's eye undervalued. But the game doesn't change. You've got to chase the professionals and you've got to deal with professionals. There you are, listeners.
Well, Martyn, just before you go, though, we always like to throw a little science fiction in now and then, and this isn't science fiction, it's truth, is they really think that we will have hypersonic flight up and going in 2018, a year and a half from now, where you can fly from London to Sydney in 2 hours, 17,000 kilometers. The German Space Agency is in on it, Boeing, the U.S. military. This isn't just a pipe dream. They used to think Concorde was impossible, too. What's your feeling about these
Well, listeners,
traveling?
What you have to know is that Jim Goddard, one of his sweet spots, and one of the things he likes more than anything is this subject, and Martin Elliman's sweet spot is virtual reality. Jim Goddard's is these flights, and we both, I talked a lot about virtual reality yesterday, and it just excites the hell out of me, particularly watching a soccer game, which we've got all these things to look forward to, these wonderful things. I love the idea of the flight. I think 18 is a little bit advantageous, but hopefully we're proven wrong. I think if you said 2020 or 21, I'd say, well, I could see that maybe, with things going on. But, if I'm sure you've done a lot more work and you're a lot better read on this subject than I will ever be, Jim, in my lifetime. But, I'm one of those lucky individuals that right at the end, on different circumstances, one of those very lucky individuals. And I notice when I tell people, their eyes sparkle and they listen intensely. I flew on the Concorde from New York to London, England, and I got the 11 minutes past 1 plane out of New York airport there, and I landed in London in 3 hours and 7 or 3 hours and 11 minutes later, and it was as if I didn't even experience, for some reason, it was a strange experience because I didn't feel like I experienced the jet lag. It was a strange phenomenon. And then shortly afterwards, it wasn't long afterwards, they stopped the flights, and I managed to get upgraded, listeners, from a business, or first I think up to Concorde. But it was an amazing experience. So yes, I think it'll happen, and it will happen. And of course, that's you're stretching me out here. I'm well over my 18 minutes, I'm sure, Jim. But to understand those types of planes, they don't go around the globe, listeners. They go up. I think they break almost out of the atmosphere, don't they, Jim? And then they come back in again. So you go up and down. You don't go around like traditional airplanes.
You kind of wait for the Earth to catch up to you.
The what?
I said you kind of just hang there and wait for the Earth to catch up to you.
Well, that's right. And the biggest thing I keep talking about, and I'm talking till I'm blue in the face with my little four-year-old, almost 5, is I want to buy a really big world globe, like a big one, because I want him just to see it. I want him to, rather than show it on a page, I want to show him, like virtual reality, show him a globe. And when I talk about the Middle East, or we talk about Australia, and I can show them, well, here we are here, Michael, in Vancouver, and then have a big globe we can turn around, or not a big one, but a decent size, and say, look, go all the way around there, that's where Australia is. And because they don't, at that age, it's difficult for them to visualize the globe aspect of things, I'm sure. So I'm losing track there, Jim. I'm away. Happy Father's Day to everybody today here in Vancouver and in Great Britain, and I'm looking forward to some of these comments, and I'm really, if it sounds like I'm happy doing this show, it's because I am, listeners, and I really, really enjoy it, and Jim has a lot of patience, and my producer has a lot of patience. So thank you for the time, Jim.
Thanks a lot, Martyn.
Thank you, sir.
My guest has been Martyn Element. He's a Vancouver marketing and corporate consultant who focuses on sourcing and pursuing new business ventures. You're listening to HowStreet.com radio. You can find us on Twitter at TalkDigitalNet. Our YouTube channel is Talk Digital Network. If you have questions for the show, you can email info@HowStreet.com. I'm Jim Goddard. Happy Father's Day.
Comments made on HowStreet.com radio are an expression of opinion only and should not be construed in any matter whatsoever as recommendations to buy or sell any financial instrument at any time. Available online at TalkDigitalNetwork.com. HowStreet.com radio is a production of HowStreet Media Incorporated.